I'm Brother Scotty Slaydon, currently Secretary of Global Missions, and our seminar today is on current trends and issues within global missions. So obviously no way to cover all of those, but we'll do the best we can and highlight some of what are current trends and issues in global missions, mission sending situations. And when we say issues, I don't want it to be necessarily a negative thing, because it's not. Maybe we could view it more as challenges. These are some challenges that you face. Challenges are not bad things. Challenges can make us, quote unquote, step up our game. Challenges can cause us to evaluate what we're doing, why we're doing it. And challenges, most of us want to rise to the challenge, and we want to conquer the challenge. So if there's a way to do that, that's exactly what we want to do. So we're going to talk about some current trends and issues/challenges in global missions. And I think most of us would agree, mandate of the church, go ye therefore, teach all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That is the mandate of the church. We make disciples, we reach the lost, we bring them into a relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what we're to do. That's the whole purpose of the church. Whether that's global missions, North American missions, youth ministry, ladies ministry, Sunday school, children's ministry, whether it's singles ministry, it doesn't matter. The mission of the church is to reach a lost world. We want to bring people in relationship with Jesus Christ. So I think one thing that we should always remember, the Bible tells us in 1 Corinthians 3:6 that God gives the increase. So as a mission sending body, when you talk maybe about global missions in particular, my subject matter for today, we have to remember this is not about us. This is not about what we do. This is not about who we are. This is about reaching the world with the message of Jesus Christ. Now, technology changes, culture changes. As those things change, our approaches have to change. Of course, our message cannot change. The core doctrine that we believe cannot change. How we present that can change. We eat food. Most of us eat too much food. So I like shrimp. I like fried shrimp. I like grilled shrimp. I like coconut fried shrimp. I like shrimp in gumbo. I like shrimp etouffee. I like shrimp in jambalaya. So the shrimp is the same, but how you prepare it may be different. Our message stays the same. So the doctrine is the same. How we present that doctrine, the plate that we serve, is what we have to be able to adapt to. So when we talk about modern trends and modern issues in missions, let me talk about what traditionally has been the missions model. So traditionally, the North American missionary sent from North America has been the founder of the work. They have been the leader of the work that basically everyone else looks up to. That's who people look to, and you're the leader, you're the founder, and the respect factor and all of that good stuff. And the missionary was the, quote unquote, the great hope come from North America. I think primarily for two reasons. Number one, the finances that they brought to the table. So missionaries can bring tremendous finances, especially certain areas of the world. The financial impact is just outstanding. And then there was the perception that, well, you're from North America, so you must be more qualified and you must be better prepared. So there actually was some truth in some cases, in some instances, that the missionary was better prepared, especially if you go to a nation where there is no established work, you don't have any believers. Obviously, you would be better prepared. But in some instances, it was just simple education. A certain nation, they didn't have much of an education system. People were not prepared in basic education. So even reading and writing was a challenge to many of them. So yes, the missionary was by default better prepared. That's not really the case in hardly any place today. When you look around the world at the mission fields, we have national leaders, national pastors, not even just leaders, but tremendously capable men and women of the gospel, prepared academically, exceeding what a missionary's ever done. But that's good news. That's what we want. We want people to be better prepared. We all want the next generation to be better prepared than we are, than we were, than our parents were. That's kind of the point of this whole thing. We all want our children to do better than we did. Not just our physical children, but our children in the gospel, if you would, so to speak, in that manner. So that really has changed. That part of missions work has changed. And the missionary is not always the most prepared or the most qualified. And then with the advent of the internet, the national church, the people that thought the missionary was the greatest preacher they ever heard. Nobody could preach like our missionary. Well, now they can get online and they can stream 100 different services if they want. And they realize that their missionary may not be the greatest preacher or speaker in the world. And that's not a bad thing, because it also lets them know we're part of a great worldwide body. We're part of something that's bigger than us. It's bigger than just our local congregation, our local nation. This is something that goes around the world. Now, our challenge is to stay relevant and effective. And so if we're no longer relevant, people will find something that is. If we're no longer effective, they're going to find something or someone that is. So our challenge is to continue to preach the gospel, minister to people, the lost world, people that are hurting, supply their needs in many different aspects of doing that. But we do it and we stay relative and we stay effective by keeping the core doctrine, gospel of the Word of God. So I'm going to talk about a few trends, and some trends have issues with them. They bring certain issues just because this trend is bringing an issue with it. It's change. It is just what it is. And some things are, I don't know if they're necessarily trends. They may be more issues than trends, but we'll kind of explore that. And some of this is, you can look up. It's pretty hard, fast data that we have here. Other stuff is maybe a subjective view. Maybe people have a little different view. But there are some things that we're facing in the missions world, not just with the United Pentecostal Church, not just in the apostolic movement, but we are facing some trends and some changes and some issues throughout Christianity. Everyone's facing it. And so we're going to talk about some of those today. The first one is the trend of technology. Wow, it is changing. It is changing rapidly. Those of us that are older remember the days before personal computers, home computers, tablets, cell phones, etc., before you could talk to things and they did what you told them to do, not people, machines. The days before the cars had all the things. It's just, technology is just, and is it accelerating at a tremendous rate, which can be great and it can have its negative things. But in the aspect of the gospel, of missions work, of global missions, COVID-19, the pandemic, the shutdown, it opened the door for streaming ministry, the video ministry, the pre-recorded ministry, we can't meet in churches, we can't get together, but we can stream. So this happened. Now, there were people streaming. There were, of course, churches that did it. There were groups that did it. But no one did it like we had to do it during COVID-19. Just people buying the equipment, the cameras, the lighting, the streaming, getting bandwidth, all this stuff just increased because it had to. You know, we're not going to shut down. We may shut down the countries, quote unquote, and quarantines and everybody's locked down and stuff, whatever the particular governments would issue the mandates. But the church is going to continue to go. We're going to stream. We're going to do whatever we can do. Social media was used to keep in touch with certain missionaries were not able to be on location. Maybe they were caught not where they live. So they kept in touch with the people on the field, their church members, the body of believers in another nation. They kept in touch via streaming, via social media. They were able to do that. Some people, because of severe lockdowns, they were in the city. They were in where their people lived, but they couldn't get to anyone. So going out was very, very restricted. You could maybe go to the grocery store limited, but they kept in touch via social media. via Facebook, YouTube, all of these things. It was able to keep people in touch in the midst of all of this. So because of that, some have concluded, I've read a few articles, in fact, recently, that this is the new future of global missions, of the mission sending organizations, of missionary work, of overseas missionary work outside of North America. The future is Zoom, Facebook, YouTube, whatever other way they have to do it. All these different things, that's the future of mission sending, is streaming live and getting in touch with people. So it is certainly cheaper and much less time consuming to stream a message from Columbus, Ohio to Zimbabwe than it is to fly from Columbus, Ohio to Zimbabwe. It is definitely cheaper to do that and much less time consuming. So we can put whole training courses on flash drives. We can take iPads, e-readers, all these types of things. You can fill this with a whole 4 years or more of training curriculum, videos included. You can download them from the internet or wherever means you would have. That we can do those things now. Technology is definitely changing the game. So you can put a 4-year, 3-year course, whatever, on a tablet, which is way cheaper than printing 100 textbooks. It's way easier than printing 100 textbooks. Technology has changed the game. There's no doubt it has changed the game. People can travel with this. It's much easier to move around, especially in countries where you're not loading all your books in your car. You're loading your books on the public transportation bus, and not a nice bus. It's a bus that there's no air conditioning. The seats are ripped up and messed up. People have chickens on the bus. People have goats on the bus. People have other types of animals on the bus. They went to the market. They're buying food. So you're in the midst of all this, and you've got your books, or you can just have it here, or you could have the flash drive. So yes, technology has certainly changed the game in many aspects. Digital Bibles, commentaries, study books, all these things right here on the phone. But you have it all there. People can access training modules online. It certainly has changed the game. So this is a trend in global missions, in sending missionary personnel, and how we operate and how we deal. Definitely is a trend that we're dealing with here. Now, one of the issues that comes with this, you don't really build relationships if you're just doing a Zoom meeting with people. You're not building that relationship. Relationships are built not when you preach to people, not minimizing preaching, not when you just teach to people, but when you interact with people. When you spend time after the class with the student that didn't want to ask the question in class, but meets you outside the class and wants to ask a question. That's where you build relationships. You build relationships with people when you take time to understand their culture and you understand their language. You're showing them your culture, your language. You are important to me. And that's how you build relationships with people. You build relationships just like a pastor does. When the family needs prayer, you pray for them. You go to their home, you visit them. You're in the hospital with them, with their children. That's how you build relationships. So all the technology is great, and all of the video and Zoom and GoToMeeting and YouTube and Facebook streaming, that's all great. But the issues that come with that is it doesn't really build relationships. It gets something done, but it doesn't really build relationships. And it's hard to trust someone, build a trust with someone, let me say, when I'm going to do a Zoom meeting with you and I'm from my home, I'm in my basement, I'm at my church office, and after we're done, I've got 37 restaurants I can choose from to go to lunch. And all of you that watched me, you don't really know where your next meal is coming from. So to say that I feel your pain, it's kind of, I really don't feel your pain. So there are some issues, there are some challenges, not challenges we can't overcome or issues that we can't get around, but there are some challenges. And I think some of these things, it's not so much You don't just Zoom. You don't just use technology. You use technology along with your relationship building and the personal touch. So we have these trends, but we also have some issues, but we're going to conquer those issues, and we're going to use these things as tools to minister the gospel of Jesus Christ all around the world. The second trend let me talk about today is humanitarian work. So over the last probably 20 years, humanitarian missionary work has just skyrocketed. It is really, really off the charts. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. I think maybe, at least in my opinion, one of the negative is some mission sending organizations, all they do now is humanitarian work. So they've gone from gospel, mission sending, doing humanitarian, to just humanitarian. They don't preach, they don't minister, they just do humanitarian. That's okay. There are many organizations that just do humanitarian. I think a danger we have to be careful of is that the humanitarian overtakes the spiritual. They're both vitally important. And I will say this, when you minister to someone through humanitarian assistance, we did it in El Salvador. We had medical clinics. I've participated in humanitarian efforts in El Salvador and through Compassion Services International all around the world, different aspects and different kinds. People are very appreciative. Now, humanitarian ministry, this is very popular. It provides an immediate relief, gratification. It's awesome. You hand out clothes to people that need clothes. They've lost everything in a disaster. They're thankful. They're thanking you. That feels good. You give food to people that don't have food. You help put a roof on someone's home that they lost their roof. You do these things. You help people. It feels good to help people. It really does. And even if they don't say thank you, which 99% of the time they do, but even if they don't, it just really feels good to help people. And we should help people. Now, another reason humanitarian work is I guess popular may or may not be the right word, but excuse me, almost anyone qualifies. So what I mean by that is, if you're going to go and teach a seminar on family values or something, you should probably have some qualifications to teach that seminar. You should probably be able to do it. If you're going to teach a seminar on education, you should probably be an educator. It would help. If you're going to go pass out rice and buckets of beans to people that don't have food, your qualifications are you can pick up the buckets and hand them to people with a smile. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a great thing because it gets many more people involved. So you can take a group of younger people. You can take a group of older people. You can take a group of people that they don't have the qualifications to do specific seminars. They're not an electrician. They can't wire the new building or whatever, but they can go and pass out goods and help people. And that's awesome because the old saying in missions is exposure creates a burden. And that's very, very important. We have a biblical mandate to help people with humanitarian needs. The Bible tells us to help others, to love our neighbor as ourselves. If we see someone in need, we don't just say, God bless them, we help them. So we can't get around that. We're to clothe people, we're to feed people, we're to give them water, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Yes, we help people. We do that. So that's a biblical mandate we have. Now, I think the issue is what I mentioned at the beginning of this particular part. It should never take the place of evangelism. It should complement evangelism, and it can if it's done right. You can have humanitarian and you can have evangelism. And there are places that humanitarian work has opened the doors for evangelism. That old saying, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. It is really, really true. So another issue, let me hit this real quick, and we've got about 10 minutes left, so our time is going quickly here. But one of the things with humanitarian work is if you start doing big projects like building schools, medical clinics, if you build orphanages and stuff, building it is the easy part. Maintaining it is the hard part. You've got staff to pay. You've got bills to pay. You've got utilities to pay. You've got repairs and maintenance. You've got legal things to do and stuff. And so that's the hard part. Building it is easy. That's easy. But the long-term maintaining it and keeping it going, that can be an issue. But it shouldn't be an issue that deters us. It's an issue. We're going to get around this issue. We're going to take care of this issue. We're going to conquer this issue, and we're going to go forward. So that's another trend with some issues. Let me talk about a big trend in missions is short-term missions. And so I'm going to call it short-term missions and short-term missions. So my definition today is short-term missions can be a few months or a couple of years. That's short-term missions. It's not your long-term career. This is not your 20, 30, 40 years in missions. You want to do missions for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. That's short-term missions. Now, short-term missions is we're going to take a trip for a week. We're going to take a 10-day trip somewhere. And again, this harkens back to what we mentioned in the humanitarian portion. You're exposing people to the mission field. It's fantastic. You're exposing people to different cultures, to different foods, to different things, to different ways. No, in certain cultures, men and women don't shake hands. You don't greet this way, or you greet this way, or you don't do this, or you sit here, you do that. It's awesome to introduce people to all these new things. It's creating something in them. They may never be a long-term missionary. They may take a week trip, and that's the only thing they do. And that's great. That has its place. They will never forget that trip. Every time a missionary comes to their church, whether it's a global missionary, whether it's a North American missionary, they're going to remember, wow, I took a trip one time. I can identify when the missionary talks about the weird food or the different culture or something that they're facing, that person sitting in the church can say, I remember when I was 17, when I was 22, we took a trip. I experienced that weird food. I experienced this different culture. So short-term missions, positives on that, it's more bang for the buck, I guess you could say. You can get more people involved. And again, like humanitarian, there's not a lot of extensive training that is required before this. Now, some people feel that short-term missions and even short-term missions, they really feel that this is the future of missions work. We don't need people in missions long-term. We don't need people that go and stay 20, 30, 40, 50 years working in a certain location. All we need is people to every once in a while to go and check, come back to North America, go and check. We'll send some short-term groups and short-term groups, and everything would be fine. Some people think that's the future of missions. I think it's a tool. I think short-term missions, I did short-term missions for 3.5 years. So I believe in short-term missions. That's where we get our missionaries from. That's where we harvest them from. They come out of your churches. They come out of our churches all across North America. These people that have a burden for missions, they go on a short-term missions trip. Then they go on a short-term missions trip. And then they want to do this 20, 30 years. So I'm a firm believer in short-term and short-term missions work. I don't think it is the only future of missions. I think it is the tool that we can use to reach our world with the message of Jesus Christ. Some issues with this, again, I go back to relationships. You can't really build relationships if you visit somewhere for a week, for 10 days, for a month, for a couple of months. You can build a superficial relationship, but until you're there and you experience things with people, you don't really build that long-term relationship of trust. So I think that can be one of the issues we face. Now, another issue you can face with short-term missions is they can cause more harm than they do good. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a certain situation where if there's no one on location, if there's not a missionary or a national leader there that can really give them some insight, some cultural things you need to be aware of, they can offend people, not intentionally, not on purpose, but they can offend people. They can cause some cultural issues. When we were missionaries in El Salvador, we always sent a letter to those who were coming to visit. Please be careful of these things. I'm not saying they're wrong or they're sin, but we ask you to don't do these things and do these things while you are in our country, because it is our culture. It is what they are used to here. So you have to be careful of those things. You have to be careful sometimes short-term and short-term missions. They go to a place and they really, I feel so bad, this pastor here or this individual, we want to give them an offering, and that's okay, that's great. You feel compassion, you feel compelled to do that. If you don't know who you're giving it to, if you don't really know, there's no accountability with this, it can cause problems for that person, and it could cause problems for other people that they are working with. So some issues there. But you can overcome those issues, especially if you have missionary personnel on the field, national leadership on the field that you communicate and coordinate with, and you guide things through them. Let me talk about the last thing here, and I've got a few more, but I certainly won't have time. I want to talk about regional missions, or what some people call reverse missions. So there's an increase in nations outside of North America to send missionaries to other nations. Why do they do that? Because it's much easier for them to travel. There are some places that you can't get into this country if you have a U.S. passport, or there are nations you can't get into if you have a Canadian passport. Or maybe you can get in, but it's a challenge to get in if you have one of those passports. Well, if you're coming from a neighboring nation and you're not a U.S. or Canadian citizen, it can be much easier access to get in to that place. Many places, they already know the language. It's a neighboring country. They all speak the same language. You don't have to send them to language school. They're effective almost immediately. If you send a North American missionary there, they may have to do a couple of years of language school. It may take them 4 or 5 years or more before they truly understand the language and the culture. Whereas what we call a regional missionary, sent from a neighboring country, sent from within the same region, they know the language, they understand the culture, they understand the people. Now, probably the two biggest areas that are doing this now would be Latin America and Africa. They're sending missionaries all around the world. I think that's an exciting thing. I think that's a great thing. We have, within Global Missions, through the Global Council, we have the Regional Missionary Program. And our nations, our United Pentecostal Church International works all around the world are sending and supporting their own missionaries to other nations. Both the sending and receiving nations agree, and they receive these regional missionaries. Now, some people call it reverse missions because a lot of countries are sending missionaries into North America. They're sending missionaries to the U.S. and to Canada. And I'm okay with that. We can use more missionaries. We could use more churches. I don't have a problem. I don't call it reverse missions. Some people do, because instead of them coming from North America, they're coming to North America. I don't call it reverse missions because I don't think North America is the mother church. We may be the mother organization of the United Pentecostal Church International, but we're not the mother church. Church didn't start here. We're a little bit behind on that. I just call it missions. People are sending missionaries around the world. That is a current trend in missions work. I think it's a great trend. I think it's awesome. We need to reach our world with the message of Jesus Christ. So let me conclude. We've got a couple of minutes here. I will kind of wrap this up. There's some other things that I didn't get to mention today. But if you'll look up and study some of this, there are trends and things that are happening in global missions. And in 2 years from now, there's probably going to be some more trends with technology, with society. Who knows where we'll be or what's going to be happening. I think our challenge as a church is to adapt as we can. And I think we should adapt, and we do adapt, and we can adapt. We never change the message. We never change our core beliefs. We do not change that. But we reach the world with the life-changing message of Jesus Christ. We make disciples, and they make disciples, and those disciples make disciples. And they send missionaries back to North America, and they send missionaries to other parts of the world. We can never reach the world just by sending missionaries from North America. That is the truth. It is impossible. We will never do it. Global missions can't do it. If we sent every one of our pastors and church members around the world, we still could not get the job done. We need the whole body, the whole church involved in reaching our world. And God, help us today to stay relevant, to stay effective in the 21st century, in this age, in this time, to reach our world with the message of Jesus Christ. It doesn't matter the trend. It doesn't matter the issue. We're going forward in Jesus' name. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being with us. Hopefully this was a blessing on some level to you. And if you have any questions about any of this, please contact us in Global Missions. We'll be glad to sit down with you, to talk with you, to address any of these that we can. God bless you and thank you today.